Alright guys, back on again. I ran out of time on my first video, so I'll try and make this one less than the 15 minutes of the last one so that it doesn't run over time. So, once again, reiterating two things. The way politics goes down, we start out, everyone works together, tries to make things work, pluralism, right? And then, because of all the scandals and corruptions in the presidency, we have this big split in the parties, and now we're working against each other in a way, right? Now we are battling each other to win power in government. That's number one. Second thing you can pull out of this presentation is disenfranchisement and discrimination. Once again, this is a really big theme. You see it in business, right? Women and children are discriminated against, as well as minority groups. So, as I was saying before, whites who are poor fear competition from African Americans, and so violence starts breaking out against African Americans around this time period in lynch mobs. So more than 1,700 black people are lynched. Now, what's lynch? They're killed, especially by hanging for an alleged offense, with or without a legal trial. So there's not really any proof that they did anything wrong. People would just make stuff up on the spot just because they didn't like this guy or didn't like that person. This is mostly in sparsely populated areas, rural areas, guys, mostly out in the country and in the South. Ida Wells, very famous woman who protests this and the atrocities going on here. Now let's finally get to that word disenfranchisement that I've said like 3-4 times this presentation. Disenfranchisement, got over here, to take away someone's right to vote or to deprive someone of power, rights, or privileges. So, when women don't have the right to vote, when black people don't have the right to vote, when males who don't own land don't have the right to vote, this is called disenfranchisement, meaning they are no longer enfranchised. Their rights are not, their rights are taken away. So, what happens here? White political leaders limit black male voting. They incur these poll taxes of $1 to $2, so they charge people to vote. The Supreme Court allows these restrictions if they're not explicitly racist. So lots of different things that they were clever there. Today, you hear sometimes about voter registration ID cards, and some people are arguing that that is another way to disenfranchise voters. Because some people don't have a driver's license, and therefore, some people don't drive cars and therefore don't need a driver's license, so they don't have that photo ID, right? So this is just prohibiting people who would normally vote from being able to vote. The Mississippi Plan, no. Sorry, my dog is chewing on things, guys. The Mississippi Plan in 1890 subjects people to literacy tests, saying that if you can't read, you can't vote in this election. So if you're not literate enough, you're not able to vote. This is basically an intelligence test. Who's going to be excluded from here? Blacks, who it's still not mandated, have to be given an education. Poor people, still not mandated, have to be given an education. Women, well, we don't get the right to vote anyway, but still, we're disenfranchised by this rule, okay? So people that are too poor to get an education are the ones being discriminated against in this. So this is happening at the time period. Then we've got legal segregation. This is separation of blacks from whites in all areas of the law. The Supreme Court says that it voids civil rights laws, but they uphold segregation in the Plessy v. Ferguson case. So now state and local municipalities have Jim Crow laws that basically say we're going to be separate but equal. There's going to be a hospital for blacks, a hospital for whites. There's going to be a cemetery for blacks, a cemetery for whites. Water fountain for blacks, water fountain for whites. Everything is separate. On buses, we're going to have separate places for people to sit. So everything kind of separates. Some black people respond to this by protesting. Others try and get education by creating all black colleges. And black women actually lobby for reforms. This doesn't get very far. We learn when this gets somewhere, right? 1960s. All right, women's suffrage. Women start getting really angered by this. See, while everything is corrupt, people are also more politically active than we've ever seen again, right? So Women now start debating, how do we attain the right to vote? The American Women's Suffrage Association focuses on states, and the national one focuses on the national government. And these are organizations of women that have come together to lobby or to plead to the governments to start giving them some rights to vote. So they merged to become one organization in 1890. They train women to be good political activists. And in 1910, 11 states, mostly in the West, allow females to vote. Racism, though, starts to affect this debate in quite a big way. So, let's see. No, we're going to skip this stuff. Don't need to know that. Coming to our final conversations. All right, so remember on Tuesday when I was telling you guys that what can happen when big business is not regulated is that they employ a lot of people. So when they suffer, a lot of people are going unemployed. Well, and that causes depression. Well, that's exactly what happens in the 1890s. What we do in the factories would be overproduce. See, at this time period, in order for people to buy your stuff, you had to make it really well. So they were making toasters that would last 3 generations. Light bulbs are lasting a lifetime. So people would buy a product once and then never need it again. So factories were overproducing in order to lower costs so that people would buy their product. But now we've got storage areas just full of product that no one's buying. And this overproduction, they keep buying more and more and more, so they keep taking out more money in order to keep lowering costs. Well, that increases their debt, and these things cause a chain reaction. The businesses default and the banks default hand in hand. And default means that they can't pay their debts, so essentially bankruptcy in a way. So between 1893 and 97, we have a deep depression, and there's a mass suffering. Unemployment is at 20%. 20% is really high. We haven't seen unemployment that high in a long time. And the number of people homeless increases significantly. On top of that, we have currency problems. Our currency crisis diminishes our gold reserves because our currency is based on the gold standard. And so when we have a lack of currency, people start using gold. And when we don't have the gold reserves, that spreads panic, okay? Panic further threatens the economy. Everyone starts pulling their money out of banks. And so Cleveland's deal with JP Morgan Chase, remember I talked to you guys about JP Morgan, this is before he merges with Chase. They try and stop the gold drain. But everyone's upset with JP Morgan because he has such amazing profits because of what he's able to do during this. So we're inciting a lot of anger, a lot of depression. Moving out of this, the economy slowly recovers, especially because people in Arkansas strike rich with gold. And so now our gold reserves start to increase again. Our depression equals the dangers of consolidation. So one corporation buys up other corporations, and then we get what I told you about, which is General Electric's owned by NBC. NBC is owned by a wig-making company, right? And so this consolidation creates corporations out of corporations out of corporations, making very few people in the country own everything. Debts and defaults by huge businesses and consumers, that's affecting everybody. You can't keep producing stuff if you don't have the money to do it, right? And then overseas competition is starting to affect our companies from being able to sell stuff now too. So we get a lot of protests that arises and incites from this. People are really upset. One of the solutions they come up with is socialism, right? Here's our definition of socialism: a political and economic theory of social organization that advocates the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by a community. So instead of one guy like Carnegie owning an entire business, all of the workers that work there should own a piece of that business. So if workers control factories, they think it's going to solve problems. It also removes capital's focus on profits, and they focus more on keeping the workers safe and healthy. So early socialism attracts a small number of workers to it, and then we splinter into lots of little factions, small debating societies. This guy Unite Socialism gets a great activity. We don't see the end of socialism, and it's not even considered that big of much of a negative thing in our country, actually, um, until World War One and Two, until the World Wars. Okay, we're gonna skip this stuff, and that kind of brings us to a conclusion here, guys. Our election of 1896 is a big election. Uh, this is one of our first elections after Republicans and Democrats split. We also have a populist group that comes about, and the big conversation is about how do we fix this depression and make sure it never happens again. McKinley ends up winning, and he does some good things. He creates the Gold Standard Act that says all paper money has to be backed by gold. So if we don't have the gold, the money's not printed. Um, and he protects business interests. But the economy recovers from this, and so that helps spur a re-election for him. So he's a two-term president for us. And that is going to do it, guys. So take notes on that. Go back through it again. Make sure you get the key big points, and then go on Converge. I've got a study guide for you on there as well.